Welcome to this session of HR Vision, where the topic is going to be HR in the age of austerity. So without further ado, I'm delighted to be joined by Graham White, who is HR Director of Westminster City Council, and Debbie Meech, who is People Director of Cable and Wireless Worldwide. So can we start with you, Graham? Obviously, we've seen sort of a lot of research and suggestions from the CIPD recently that there's going to be a lot of job cuts in the public sector, namely 725,000. That's a big challenge for an HR department in any sort of organisation, but with spending being cut back in the public sector, what do you think are the big challenges for an HRD going forward?
I think they're twofold. I think obviously there's the challenge of being able to deliver the level of savings necessary within such a short period and within the timescales. But I think also at the same time we're in this catch-22 where we've got all this demand coming and at the same time funds being cut at an alarming rate. So I think that the challenge is about speed, about efficiency, it's about effectiveness in terms of legislation, and I think probably most important of all, it's about how we treat our staff during this process.
I mean, if staff are going to be sort of worried about sort of job losses and sort of recruitment freezes, pay freezes going forward, how can you motivate staff in an age of austerity?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting one, and one that we're spending a lot of time on at the moment. So it's not only about the things that we're doing, but it's about making sure we regularly check with our staff to ask them what is the current situation. So we now survey our staff every 3 months so that we can catch any trends that are going in the wrong direction. But what does it really mean? I think it's 3 very simple things. I think it's about engaging with the staff all the time, and that's in any and every environment where we can get staff to sit down and to talk with their managers and to talk with their managers' managers. I think it's about understanding what motivates them. And that's difficult because in an altruistic grouping like a public sector body, many of the drives are about caring for the elderly, they are about professional content. And then I think probably the hardest but the most important is about making sure our managers understand the skills necessary to manage staff in crisis. It's easy to be a manager when things are going well, but real managers come through when it's going badly.
Crisis is an interesting word to use there. I think it's fair to say over the last couple of years, as we sort of went through downturn and then recession, there was crisis in the private sector as well. Debbie, how would you say that sort of coming out into a tentative recovery and then with these spending cuts, it's had an effect on HR in your organisation and sort of in the wider private sector?
I think HR in the private sector, and then the same in the public, is that you're constantly looking at the way to engage, but also to reduce your cost base. And things that we particularly have been looking at in terms of just reducing within our own function is the cost of benefits. How can we make those much more cost effective, but still giving great benefits? And I think systems. How can we make sure that our systems are, they're kind of user-friendly, but at the same time reducing costs? And, in terms of the amount of people that report to an individual, that's probably going to increase. It's not about taking out a whole level of management, but actually saying, have we got, that kind of 8-to-1, perhaps 10-to-1 ratios, which says, yes, you're asking your people to take on more colleagues in terms of their management, but giving the same sort of engagement to them.
Well, it's interesting actually that both of you have mentioned the role of the line manager in sort of working with staff through difficult times. How do you find as HR directors it is sort of difficult or complicated to really engage line managers with the HR function, especially when times are tough and they're worried about their own targets?
I think that's quite true, and I think at times they see HR through a different set of eyes. They're anxious that the HR appears to have moved from being something of the motivational side of the organisation to the dastardly do the nasty things. But I think that there's another angle to that too, which is actually how ill-equipped management in the purest sense is to deal with a recession of this size. And I think certainly in the public sector we found that our managers have not been managers long enough to remember remember any previous experience. And so as a consequence, it's almost fundamentals again, and that where they have difficulties to make sure they see teams like HR, OD, occupational health as places to go for support and guidance.
Yes, I'd thoroughly agree with Graham. I think we're a global company. So getting to a global management base has its challenges. One of the ways we've done that is through what we call Management Matters. So every third Thursday on each month, we have a webinar, and we have a guest speaker, and it's on a particular subject that is related to what's happening in the business at that time. And we've really seen the uptake of the skill base, and result in the opinion survey where people are saying, yes, my manager is inspiring me, and so forth. So a good result there.
I'd be interested actually to talk about the skill base, and over the last few years the research that I've read has suggested that sort of during 2008, 2009 there was quite a big sort of influx of people moving out of the private sector into the public sector. Now the way things are looking, it's going to be the other way round. What are the challenges for both of you for staff leaving, staff moving in? Do you think that's a fair assumption to say that's going to happen? And what are the challenges for talent management and seeking out the right skills for your businesses?
I think what we've got to remember is it's an opportunity. And the danger is, and some of the recent press has suggested it's anything but an opportunity. And we've seen, unfortunately, too many of the leading recruitment agencies talking about the inability to cross-skilled staff out of one sector into the other. The reality is that many of the skills are actually codependent and can work successfully in both. But I do think there is something in terms of the private sector having the confidence to take enthusiasm and experience and add back the commercial elements that the individual may not have had if they've had a much longer career in the public sector. But the ability and the capability will always be there. I've always said that both public and private have a problem with performance. The only difference is that the private sector deals with it.
Do you want to hire staff from the public sector, Debbie? Yes,
I do. I think it's not which sector you necessarily come from, but have you got the right skills to do that job? And I don't think it necessarily we have an issue with that at all. I think the challenge for us is making sure that we induct people fully into the organisation.
So in short, times are tough, and they're going to be tough for the next 5 years. What would your advice be to other HR directors dealing with sort of cost-cutting, benefits being cut, recruitment freezes, pay freezes, demotivated staff? Because let's face it, that's what we're going to be seeing in this age of austerity. What would your advice be to your colleagues in other organisations? I
think certainly the first thing I would say to them is that right now is as good as it gets. It is going to get worse. And I think what I'd be saying to them is do you see this as an opportunity, or do you see it as simply an imposition being forced on you? I think if HR directors set out now to ensure that they engage with their workforce through whatever solution their organisation picks, and ensures that engagement is real and sincere, then when we're through this difficult time, then we'll see the value of that investment.
I can certainly support that in terms of the sincerity is really important. I think, creating that future picture, which says it isn't always going to be black. It's, let's paint the picture of the future and how we're going to get there is really important. I think the listening and the taking action on that listening. You talked about the opinion survey every 3 months, which is fantastic. And I think that probably a new thing for us is recognising Facebook and YouTube, right? And putting that into the workplace and saying, okay, that peer-to-peer communication, how can we encourage that? Because I think the engagement comes from honesty and having that culture where it says you can, say it like it is. Now, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to tackle it? And I think that we're creating a magazine online called an e-zine, which is a lot of videos of colleagues around the globe. What are their challenges and what are they doing about it, and sharing that with others. And we also have a tool called Collaboration, which is a bit like Facebook, but for businesses, where people can share their knowledge. Because for the generation X and Y and so forth, knowledge isn't about power. Knowledge is about sharing. and sharing their knowledge and getting to know people wherever they may be, Beijing or Bracknell.
And how far do you think that HR is going to be fundamental in getting us through this age of austerity?
Well, you won't be surprised to know I believe we are the solution. And I regularly remind my chief executive of that. I'm not sure he's as convinced as I am right now, but more seriously, I believe that we have the skills base, we have the experience, and we have the background to help organisations come through this. And I do believe that nobody wanted austerity, nobody wanted recession, but it would be a foolish HR department that doesn't use the opportunity to show its true value.
So all that remains to be said is thank you very much, Graham. Thank you, Debbie. So you heard it here first. HR is going to be influential in an age of austerity. Thank you for watching.